From CBS News Convention Headquarters in Miami Beach, this is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite and Charles Kuralt in the CBS Newsroom in New York. Eric Severide in Miami Beach, Mike Wallace in Miami Beach, Bert Quint in Miami, Charles Collingwood in Paris, Tony Sargent in South Vietnam, and Robert Pierpoint in Austin, Texas.
Good evening. Republican presidential nominee Richard Nixon today surprised everyone in bypassing the favorites and announcing he wants a little-known 49-year-old border state governor as his running mate. Nixon's announcement came at a hotel news conference at midday, almost 11 hours after his early morning first ballot convention victory, and a long series of conferences with party leaders.
I have now made a decision. I shall recommend to the convention that it nominate for vice president on the Republican ticket Governor Agnew of Maryland.
No one apparently was more surprised with the selection than Spiro Theodore Agnew himself, a one-time Rockefeller supporter who switched to Nixon and gave the nominating speech for the former vice president last night. Son of a Greek immigrant who changed his name from Anagnostopoulos, Agnew was born in Baltimore, saw combat in World War II, earned a law degree after the war, and began his slow climb through local, county, and state politics. Even so, he received no nationwide prominence until this convention, when as Maryland's favorite son, he delivered 18 of his delegation's 26 first ballot votes to Nixon. At a news conference this afternoon, Agnew gave his reaction to being picked by Nixon and explained his views on some of the major issues.
I've just finished conferring with the presidential nominee, Mr. Nixon. I know the first question I'm going to get is, are you surprised? And the answer is, I'm stunned. I had no idea that this was going to happen. It came as a bolt out of the blue. Of course, my family is tremendously excited about it. I'm excited about it. I welcome the chance at this crucial moment in the history of this country to be a contributing part of a campaign team that I hope will put America on a new level of progress. Mr. Nixon informed me that he has selected me primarily because he has some confidence in my knowledge of the problems of the cities, of county and state government, and we all recognize that there's a tremendous need to adopt a new set of criteria. I think my civil rights position can not be simply described. I'm on record with many statements on civil rights. I am pro-civil rights. I am for the implementation of civil rights, not just the elaborate programming and distribution of money which is intended to bring about the equal opportunity and the justice that everyone talks about. On the other hand, I expect fully that no civil rights can be realistically achieved without the restoration of order, without the abandonment of the condoning of civil disobedience. I will work enthusiastically in civil rights, and I think that's one of the reasons I'm on this ticket, because I have a record that I'm proud of in this area. How do I stand on Vietnam? I suppose my stand is one that hopes that we'll be able to bring this war to an end at the earliest possible moment. I have a personal interest in that. I have a son that's in Vietnam and has been there for about 5.5 months. I feel very strongly, however, that the simple yearning for peace, the continued attempts to rationalize the communist position and accept it as one in good faith, which we have no indication we can do, is not the answer to the problem.
The name of Spiro Agnew is hardly a household political word across the nation.
I would certainly agree with that, yes.
Would you analyze what political strength you actually do bring to a Nixon ticket?
I just can't analyze any strength I bring, and I agree with you that the name of Spiro Agnew is not a household name. I certainly hope that it'll become one within the next couple months.
CBS News correspondent Bill Plant learns that Agnew was chosen primarily in the interest of party unity. because his urban orientation fits easily into the central political position that Nixon has sought between liberals and conservatives. The Nixon people are also said to believe that only a generally middle-of-the-road ticket can win this year and must be able to appeal for support from both Negro and blue-collar voters. Platt also reports that while the Nixon camp insists that the vice presidential choice was not made until almost midday, it's believed that consideration basically had focused on Agnew as early as around 5 o'clock this morning before Nixon broke off the conferences for an hour's sleep.
You people who want hours of relief from minor pains of arthritis and muscular aches, how many pain relievers do you know of that give you a second dose of pain relief before the first wears off? Measurin does, the first pain reliever with a built-in second dose. Measurin contains a double dose of aspirin in timed release form, so you take it just once every 8 hours instead of every 4. Convenient timed release Measurin with a built-in second dose for a long-lasting pain relief.
When you have acid indigestion, every second counts. So count on instant-acting Phillips tablets. Phillips tablets go to work in seconds. With one of the fastest stomach settlers ever discovered, each small Phillips tablet neutralizes more excess stomach acid than the leading antacid tablet that comes in a roll. So for fast relief from acid-upset stomach, when every second counts, count on instant-acting Phillips tablets.
Nixon seems to have pleased Southern Republicans in choosing Agnew to run with him, but there's been considerable grumbling about the selection among party liberals and Northerners. Ronald Reagan praised the choice of Agnew as, quote, certainly acceptable to the South, but Nelson Rockefeller told reporters rather curtly that he would have no comment. But a Rockefeller supporter did, New York City Mayor John Lindsay.
Of course, it remains to be seen how strong the ticket is, and we'll only know that in November after the votes are counted.
But as Governor Agnew reiterated what Mr. Nixon said several months ago, that there can be no progress without order, what's your view on that?
Well, my view of it is that the first thing that comes is justice, and I don't believe that there can be order without justice, and I don't think there can be respect for law without justice. But I hope that we won't have just a repetition of the theme law and order, because I don't know any person in the United States except a few madmen who are not for law and order. The question is to get to the fundamentals, and that is what is the meaning of the word justice.
Would you campaign for the ticket, Mayor Lindsay?
So far as I have time as mayor of New York City, I've always said, ever since I've been mayor and before I was mayor, that first obligation is the people of New York City in the office of mayor.
There also was reaction to the Nixon nomination and to his selection of Agnew from two leading Democrats. Eugene McCarthy commented in Washington, Hubert Humphrey in Waverly, Minnesota.
I think the selection of Richard Nixon by the Republican convention was quite a proper selection for the Republicans. His position on foreign policy has been consistent over the years and reflects a Republican point of view. And the same is true, I think, of what he's had to say about the domestic problems of this country, to suggest that they are serious, but not to propose anything very expensive or very formal by way of trying to solve them. The selection of the governor of Maryland came as somewhat of a surprise in terms of, I think most of us here had begun to think about his having to select somebody from the Congress, although the tradition of the Republican Party over the years is rather a strong one of picking governors much more often than the Democrats picked them.
Mr. Nixon has chosen Governor Agnew of Maryland as his vice presidential candidate. How would you evaluate that choice?
Well, the governor is a competent public official and serves his state well. I have a feeling that the choice represented a rather significant compromise. Mr. Nixon had a great deal of support from the South. Maryland is a border state. And I would imagine that the choice of Governor Agnew was related to some of the problems within the Republican Party. But he's a responsible public official, a man that I know and respect. Mr. Nixon has made his choice, and we now have a Republican ticket that we can go to the mat with, so to speak, in the campaign.
Violence erupted again today in a predominantly Negro section of Miami, several miles across Biscayne Bay from this convention hall, and apparently not related to the convention. It followed a less serious disturbance last night, and CBS News correspondent Bert Quint was on the scene when today's outbreak occurred.
From a CBS News helicopter, you could see how rough things were getting as Miami's first real racial trouble in years escalated into a major disturbance. Mobs of Negro youths protesting about low employment and demanding that white police leave their neighborhood continued to hurl rocks, bottles, and fire bombs for the second day. Despite efforts by police and some Negroes in the area called Liberty City to keep the lid on, there were a number of exchanges of fire between police and rioters, and a number of small businesses went up in flames. National Guard troops were called into action as the neighborhood became a small battlefield. Authorities imposed a 6 p.m. curfew on the area. This is how the action looked as we saw it from the ground.
Hey, Humphrey, anybody shot back there? That one unit took from us. We got McClure here. He wants to know.
As night fell, the trouble continued. Bert Quint, CBS News, Miami.
We asked our chief foreign correspondent, Charles Collingwood, what the European reaction was to the Nixon nomination. Charles?
Europeans have become so sophisticated about American politics that Richard Nixon's nomination last night occasioned no greater surprise over here than it did in Miami. But in spite of the fact that Nixon has been in the forefront of American policy and American politics for so many years, the Europeans feel that they know very little about where he stands on those issues of American policy which most directly affect them. That will undoubtedly become clear when the electoral campaign actually begins. But as of today, most European statesmen and European commentators feel that a Nixon presidency would represent no sharp break with the continuity of American foreign policy. For instance, they would not expect him either to suddenly give way on Vietnam or suddenly to escalate the fighting there. In these days of worldwide currency tribulations, they would expect him to follow an orthodox fiscal and monetary course. In broader matters of foreign policy, they note with approval his apparent desire to continue to press for a détente with the Soviet Union. That, of course, still leaves a good many gaps in what the Europeans know about Nixon. But if they don't know anything to engulf them in a wave of enthusiasm for him, nevertheless, they're not frightened at the prospect of his presidency as they were of Goldwater's 4 years ago. Europeans have learned that the way the world works these days, they're going to have to live in terms of considerable intimacy with whomever is elected president of the United States. As of today, they think that if the mantle does descend upon Richard Milhouse Nixon in November, they will be able to live with him. Charles Collingwood, CBS News, Paris.
Isn't the security of your property and possessions important to you? Watch this amazing demonstration of strength and security, filmed exactly as it happened on a police firing range. This is a Master laminated cylinder padlock. Watch. The Master padlock is only slightly dented, and it still works perfectly. How can it withstand such a powerful force? Because the case is laminated like a bank vault door, layer upon layer of tough steel to protect the inner working parts. Master stacks up strong, dependable, secure. Whatever your security needs, Master has the answer. More than 80 styles to choose from. For your home, for outdoors, for schools and industry, for whatever you want to keep secure. Enjoy the peace of mind that comes from real security. Get a master padlock at hardware stores, locksmiths, wherever locks are sold. Unbeatable.
171 Americans are listed as killed in action in the Vietnam War in the weekly announcement of the United States Command. 563 men were reported hospitalized with wounds. The South Vietnamese say 250 of their men were killed in combat last week, and the number of communist dead was put at 899. Allied soldiers, again sweeping through the A Shau Valley, have skirmished with few enemy troops so far. That may be an indication that the main communist force, which was there, has moved out. The Allies haven't found as many weapons and supplies as they expected to either. The A Shau operation, the second in 4 months, actually began last Sunday, but it wasn't announced until today for security reasons. At least 3,000 men are involved, flown in by helicopter. The orders of their American commander are to destroy everything we can. A major goal of this operation in the A Shau is to keep enemy troops off balance in case, as expected, they're planning a new offensive. And as Tony Sargent reports, the men of the Army's 1st Division have a technique of their own for keeping the enemy guessing.
These artillerymen are readying their 105mm howitzers to move forward in support of infantry units. This technique of moving artillery quickly and often has been a large factor in keeping the enemy convinced the time is not ripe for a major new offensive. Each of these howitzers with crew and equipment weighs about 4 tons. But that's no strain for this Chinook helicopter descending to a spot marked by a smoke grenade. The chopper hovers over the big gun. Cables from the howitzer are slipped onto the helicopter's lifting hook. As the Chinook lifts the howitzer, it also hauls a huge pack of equipment and supplies beneath the gun. To the enemy, this sight means trouble ahead. The only question is, where? The Chinook brings its cargo down in a spot that probably is on nobody's map, except the Army's 1st Division and maybe the VC. This quickly set up forward fire base is in the much fought over area north of Saigon, south and east of Cambodia, a sometime passageway for enemy reinforcements and supplies. In command of this base, Captain Robert Quigley.
Does moving around like this help keep the enemy from drawing a bead on you?
Oh, yeah, it definitely helps them from drawing a bead on us. Most of the time, my people don't know where they are, so I'm sure Charlie don't know where we are. There's no doubt about it.
Does moving around like this cause some problems for you?
Every move causes its own problems. It's a tremendous job of coordination. You've got helicopters coordinate, infantry, artillery, but moving around does improve morale quite a bit. The people see they are having an important job to do, and if you ask any man out here, they'll all tell you the same thing, that it makes time go faster, and that's the important thing.
As more guns and supplies are lifted in by helicopter, the dusty wind sends empty sandbags high into the air. Gun crews tighten fuses on the 105mm ammunition. Then firing begins.
Quadrant 443. 443.
An enemy force has just been spotted north of this base.
Ready fire.
The howitzer crews keep contact with a fire control officer to the rear. He, in turn, communicates with a spotter plane flying near the target area. Within a few days, these guns again will be lifted quickly to the next place in which the enemy does not expect them.
Deflection 1716. 2 rounds. 1716. Jay.
These men aren't sure why the enemy has decided to lie low lately, but they like to think the kind of thing they're doing out here today has helped. Tony Sargent, CBS News, with artillery of the Army's 1st Division.
Lieutenant General Václav Perklik, the Czechoslovak Army leader who was fired because the Soviets didn't like what he said about the Warsaw Pact, now has been nominated as a candidate to the Czechoslovak Communist Party's Central Committee. The general was removed as head of military and security affairs 2 days before the Soviet-Czechoslovak meetings, which seemed to please Moscow. Now, after the meetings, he's back in favor, because what the Russians think doesn't matter so much anymore in Czechoslovakia.
This is the world's first radial ply wide oval tire. Two important things ride on it: your family and our reputation. The Amoco 120 SS Radial Oval. 2 million test miles prove it gives mileage double that of most new car tires. Double. 6 plies under the tread give 3 times the carcass strength of most new car tires. A traction tire. The tread grooves stay open to grip the road as a tire has never gripped the road before. The new Amoco 120 SS Radial Oval. It's reversible. Red stripe on one side, white on the other. A great new tire. It has to be. We know when you buy a tire from us, we both live with it. After all, you expect more from American, and you get it.
At the Walter Reed Medical Center in Washington, where he's recovering from his 6th heart attack, former President Eisenhower told doctors today that he's delighted by the nomination of Richard Nixon. Doctors said Mr. Eisenhower spent a restful night last night, and they are pleased with his progress. President Johnson returned today to the Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio for more physical tests. And later it was revealed that he has an intestinal ailment. CBS News White House correspondent Robert Pierpoint has the story.
President Johnson has diverticula, a fairly common intestinal ailment, and he must go back to the hospital for further medical tests. This morning he spent 4.5 hours at Brooks Army Medical Center in San Antonio. Then he and Mrs. Johnson talked with reporters. He said he feels excellent, but has diverticulitis, or that's what newsmen thought he called it. Later his physician, Dr. George Berkeley, explained the president actually has several small protrusions of the large intestinal wall known as diverticula. Berkeley revealed that Mr. Johnson's tests since 1960 have shown the presence of the diverticula, that they are not infected, and he's feeling no discomfort. But to be on the safe side, sometime in the near future, probably early next week, the president will go on a liquid diet for 48 hours, then return to the hospital for further examination. Medical experts say up to 40% of all Americans of middle age and beyond have diverticula, and they're usually fairly simple to treat. Otherwise, both the president and Mrs. Johnson passed their physicals today with all tests, as the doctors put it, well within the normal limits. Robert Pierpoint, CBS News, Austin.
Postal workers in Canada who went on strike 22 days ago today voted to end it by accepting a new government contract. They won about half the pay increases they were asking, and they're expected back at work in Canada this weekend. In Greenville, Kentucky, early today, rescue workers recovered the bodies of 9 coal miners. They were trapped when an explosion caused tons of slate to cave in. In New York, financier Louis Wolfson, who once controlled a $240 million corporate empire, today faces a possible 14 years in prison. He was convicted of perjury and filing false company reports to cover up a stock deal. 3 other defendants also were found guilty in federal court. With the exception of utilities, averages on the New York Stock Exchange closed lower today. Volume was 13 million shares. The exchange index lost 11 cents. The New York Stock Exchange proposed today that brokers' fees be reduced on orders over 1,000 shares. In a letter to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the exchange also proposed that the practice of give-ups, in which brokers split commissions, be prohibited. The exchange said the proposals would reduce brokers' commissions by about $150 million a year. In a moment, Eric Severide from Miami Beach.
Most shampoos look the same. You can see right through them. Not Luster Cream. Luster Cream has so many conditioners, it has to be creamy. More conditioners than any other leading shampoo. To make dry, lifeless hair shine again. Bounce again. Look alive again. Most shampoos look the same. Luster Cream has so many conditioners, it has to be creamy. Luster Cream, the conditioner shampoo.
The ring is off, and so is the engagement.
But all I said was...
That you can't stand my breath.
She needs a mouthwash for lovers. Honey, my boyfriend once said my breath was bad enough to kill a moose.
What did you do?
Got Colgate 100, mouthwash for lovers.
Colgate 100, the mouthwash for lovers.
The basic Nixon strategy for winning this nomination was to make as few enemies as possible, not to do or say dramatic, striking things that would make special friends. His pre-nomination strategy was the same as Tom Dewey's post-nomination strategy in '48. No certainty, of course, that the November result will be the same. The selection of Governor Agnew for the vice presidency is in line with this strategy. There are Northern Republicans who don't like it, who think the latter-day Agnew of the Baltimore riots offended too many Negro and other civil rights leaders. There are Southern Republicans who did not like the earlier Agnew, who signed the first state open housing regulations south of Mason-Dixon. Maryland is not quite south, not quite north. Few Republicans from either side of the line seem to dislike Agnew enough. So he will get from this convention tonight what Damon Runyon used to call a medium hello, and perhaps a bit more. The Republicans are squared away now for November. The Democrats are left with their usual advantage of knowing in advance who their opposition will be before they pick their own team. And the general but unprovable notion around here is that the nomination of Nixon makes the nomination of Hubert Humphrey just a bit more likely. There seems nothing in the Republican platform that Nixon and Agnew cannot live with in comfort. Indeed, Nixon men had much to do with its writing. But there is one striking contradiction. A basic theme of the documents and the speeches at this convention all week has been that domestic troubles must now come before world troubles in our national order of priorities. Mr. Nixon has made it plain that his chief interest is foreign policy, that the current troubles abroad opened the way, in fact, for his candidacy this time. Mr. Agnew can help him on urban matters. He's something of a specialist on that. But vice presidential expertise without real power is rarely effective inside the federal government. The Republican Party has changed, but not radically, and the same seems true of the Democratic Party. The words of Professor Clinton Rossiter back in the 50s still pertain in large measure. The Democrats, he said, urban, working class, new stock, union-oriented, with a penchant for reform and spending. The Republicans, rural, suburban, middle class, old stock, business-oriented, with a penchant for the status quo and savings. Charles?
This is Charles Kuralt with Walter Cronkite. Good night.
New Silver Thins 100s, the impossible cigarette. A 100-millimeter cigarette with reduced tar and nicotine, yet better taste. Impossible. Try New Silver Thins 100s. Latest U.S. government figures show Silver Thins lowest in tar and nicotine of all 100s tested. Lower than most Kings. Can a cigarette that tastes as good as Silver Thins actually be that low in tar and nicotine? Read the United States government figures. Try Silver Thins today.
Direct from our newsroom in New York, this has been the CBS Evening News with Charles Kuralt and Walter Cronkite at CBS News Convention Headquarters in Miami Beach.